Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Today we're going to talk a little bit about John Keel, the late UFO investigator. He died back in 2009, but he's very, very famous because of his book, The Mothman Prophecies. It's a book that details the very strange goings-on that occurred in Point Pleasant, West Virginia in 1966 and 1967. Here's the book right here. I have a paperback edition of that book, The Mothman Prophecies. It was made into a film in 2002. It was a pretty good movie, but it was updated to it really wasn't the exact true story. Richard Gere was in it. It was a pretty decent movie. I remember I actually went to the theater to see that at the time. And actually, I remember on the way home from the movie theater, I broke down in the middle of nowhere in Iowa, in the middle of absolute nowhere. I'll never forget it. And actually, the engine in my car blew. It was a newer car too, so it was unbelievable. But anyway, yeah, I'll never forget that movie. But I read the book before I saw the movie, and also I read the book several times. Actually, it's one of the books I probably read about 3 times in my life, The Mothman Prophecies, and I'll probably read it again. But it tells the story of all those weird things that were going on in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, back in 1966 and 1967. It culminated with the collapse of the bridge, the Silver Bridge, just outside of Point Pleasant. It went across the Ohio River, and it seemed like a lot of the activity, the strange stuff that was going on at the time, then seemed to die down. Was all these things were leading to this one event. It's a very strange story, a true story. And John Keel was there investigating this. He had an interest in UFOs. He was doing work on this story. He met a lot of different people in Point Pleasant, West Virginia during that time, 66 and 67. And then in December, that's when that bridge collapsed. And it seems like everything was leading toward that. It's hard to describe this book. It's something, this whole story, the Mothman Prophecies, but it was very interesting. And John Keel, he had he came to a different belief system of what's going on with UFOs. Like he abandoned the idea that they were extraterrestrials at some point, and then he believed that it was ultra-terrestrial in nature. Similar concepts as to Christopher Knoll, who was a guest on my show some months ago, where he was talking about his book called Homegrown Monsters. And he has this idea that there's this consciousness, this other consciousness here. They operate. They have a lower density and a higher frequency than human beings, and we can't see them. And it's a theory. Christopher Knoll's theories pretty much line up somewhat to what John Keel, what he came to believe with regard to the phenomena. But anyway, I didn't realize this, but there was a paper, a document that he had put together back in 1967, October of 1967, while this Mothman stuff was still going on, actually. And it was about his belief at that time in October of 1967 with regard to the UFO phenomenon. And one of my subscribers, Rob Boiter, alerted me to this yesterday. He sent me the 3 pages of this. There were 18 different conclusions that he had reached as of October of 1967 with regard to the phenomenon. And at that point, it seems like he did believe that they were alien creatures, so he hadn't changed his mind yet. Although I've read that it was by the end of 1967 he did change his mind on this. But what's weird about it is at the very end of this document, it states that this is not speculative. He made it clear at the end of this that this was not speculation, that these conclusions were solid, basically. And we'll get into all of it. But yeah, before we do, I just want to read a little bit about John Keel here. This is something from the internet that I pulled up here. It says, John Keel believed the UFO phenomenon was not extraterrestrial, but a manifestation of ultra-terrestrial or non-human shape-shifting intelligences from another dimension or superspectrum that manipulate perceptions. He argued that these entities don't exist as physical objects, but rather as energy, and their appearances, which can include UFOs, monsters, ghosts, and other paranormal events, are tailored to our beliefs to create a specific effect, often a form of psychological manipulation or demonology. It says here that Keel rejected the idea that UFOs are alien spacecraft visiting Earth. He saw UFOs as part of a larger pattern of high strangeness and anomalous phenomena that have occurred throughout history. And then with regard to ultraterrestrials, he proposed that UFOs are ultraterrestrials, which he described as demonic, shape-shifting intelligences that are not necessarily originating from another planet. These entities are capable of assuming different forms and may not be made of solid matter. And then he talks about the super spectrum. He theorized that these entities exist in a different super spectrum or upper frequency of the magnetic spectrum, making them invisible to us unless they are manifesting in our reality. And according to Keel, a key purpose of this phenomenon is to influence human belief systems. The entities would create new manifestations to support existing beliefs, essentially putting on a show that we interpret according to our cultural and historical context. He considered ufology to be just another name for demonology because he saw the phenomenon as a modern version of age-old, often terrifying spiritual or demonic experiences. And of course, there are a lot of people who believe that today, that these things are more demonic than extraterrestrial. But that was what John Keel came to believe. However, if you read this report, which was supposed to be confidential, but his friend who runs this John Keel website, Doug, he posted this back in 2021. And it says at the very bottom of this 3-page document that Keel had prepared in October of 1967, it says, "The above information is not speculative. It is based upon personal experience and in-depth investigation. It represents part of the whole truth. There is much more. Please regard this as completely confidential. The record shows that all of those in possession of this information are subjected to harassment, threats, and even worse." And let me also point out one more thing about John Keel. He's actually the guy who really popularized the term MIB, or Men in Black. He's the one who started talking about that. And if it wasn't for him, we probably wouldn't be using that term these days. But here's what Keel's friend had written on this website back in 2021. It says, "I don't know quite what to make of this document. I find it fascinating but rather troubling. I assume it is what it says, an outline of John's privately held beliefs about the UFO phenomenon as of October 1967. I say privately held because he stipulates that the material not be published or discussed. That indicates that he sent or meant to send these pages to other researchers. There are several copies in the folder. He also elaborated on them in another longer document called The Answer. According to this, John believed the UFO occupants were real and hostile, and he details their plans in disturbing detail. As he says at the end, capitalized for emphasis, this is not speculative. An important part of John's personality was his love of magic. As he used to say, magic is my thing. Along with that went a love of secrecy. He had secret affairs, secret projects, and a variety of pseudonyms. This is the part of the research that he kept secret. He also abandoned many of these conclusions later, but they provide insights into what lay behind his public material from that time. You've been warned. Read on." And so then you have this document that he put together. And the top of it says, "Confidential background information. Do not publish or discuss in lectures, on radio, or TV." So this was like almost like something he wrote that he considered top secret within his own realm. And it was something that he didn't want to talk about at the time. But of course, when you read this, it's weird because it doesn't jibe with what he would be saying later on in life. But at the same time, some of it does line up to some of the hypotheses that we talk about today, including a lot of the things I've been talking about on my show. A lot of this does line up with some of the stuff that David M. Jacobs talks about in some of his books. But anyway, let's just go through these one by one. And as we do, I just also want to point out that I did send this because the one guy that I know that I talk about all the time, the retired electronics engineer who did work for DARPA, NASA, the CIA, and he's retired now. I actually sent this to him last night, and he actually sent it back with notes on each bullet point here where he gives his opinion on what's being said. So we'll talk about all of that as we go through each of these points that Keel had made back in October of 1967. We'll go through it one by one. So number one, UFOs operate from terrestrial bases. At the present time, there is one or more bases per county in the United States, others being established at a rapid pace. So he's saying here that as of October 1967, John Keel had come to the belief that there are UFO bases in every single county in the United States. You're talking a lot. You're talking a lot. And as I want to pull up the notes that I received from from the my anonymous source who used to work for NASA, among other federal agencies. And what does he say? He says, after that statement, he writes, "If this was true, there would be a million of them by now." Okay. Well, I guess so. Yeah. If that were true, there would be a million of them at this point, but I'm not so sure. But hey, this is what he came to believe back in 1967, October. By the way, I wasn't even conceived yet, let alone born. So, I mean, this has been going on a long time, and I'm pushing 60 right now. So I just want to point that out too. Number two, most of the UFO occupants are controlled entities. The majority are only slightly different from us in appearance, but there are marked biological differences. There is no way to determine the identity or location of the controller. So he's talking about a controller here too. And isn't that funny? Just recently I was talking about it. We don't even know. I think it was in one of my recent podcasts where I was talking about the idea of overlords of the insectoid aliens, I believe it was called, that the title of that episode. And I was wondering if there's somebody above the praying mantis aliens. And here he's talking about a controller. There's no way to determine the identity or location of the controller, and that most of these occupants are controlled. And he also says they only look slightly different from us in appearance. I would have to disagree with that. Because if you look at some of the images outside of the descriptions of the Nordics, they they don't look like us. They look like insects or reptiles, things like that, but not like humans. But of my friend here, the retired NASA engineer, he says he agrees regarding the small grays, right, that they are controlled, but he doubts that they look. The majority only are slightly different from us in appearance, so he doubts that. Right. And I doubt that, too. I don't think that they look like us, anything close, unless they're a hybrid. Right. So, OK, let's go on to the next one here. Number three, he writes, although they utilize our technology and sciences, their own science seems to be more psychic and physical by our understanding of the terms. Outbreaks of so-called psychic phenomena provide important clues, and the people involved should be interviewed in depth, get their entire life history and their ancestral history. Okay, let's see. I don't know about this. I mean, I don't know how he came to this conclusion. Their own science seems to be more psychic and physical. I would doubt that. I mean, I think, for one thing, I do believe that they're coming from other worlds, and apparently at this time he had that belief too. So I don't know where he thinks that they're using our technology and science. I mean, it's possible that they steal some of our energy sometime. I heard of reports of UFOs, flying saucers, hanging out near power lines, apparently sucking out energy, but electricity somehow. But that's it. Okay, let's see. What does my anonymous former NASA engineer says? He just calls that very unscientific speculation. Yeah, I would have to agree with that part there. Okay, back to number 4 here now. They are primarily engaged in A, biological experiments aimed at gradually altering the physical and emotional characteristics of our future generations. B, expanding their bases of operation. C, thwarting or suppressing the activities of their enemies, other UFO groups racing to achieve the same ends. I find this one very interesting because I agree with a lot of these things here. They are primarily, I believe that they are engaged at changing possibly our physical and emotional characteristics. If you think about the hybridization program, that's what that would be that's what that's about. And expanding their bases of operation, yeah, of course, I would think that they would want to do that. And maybe sometimes when we're seeing these giant craft, or you hear about reports of giant craft floating around Stephenville, Texas, or Phoenix, Arizona, maybe that's a new mothership arriving and checking out the scene, checking out their new abode before they go hiding under the ocean, before they go into their next phase of their whatever their operation plans entail, right? And then C, thwarting or suppressing the activities of their enemies, other UFO groups racing to achieve this. I actually agree with that one too. I mean, it's as a theory, right? Is it possible that there's multiple competing alien species trying to take control of this planet? I think that's a possibility. That could be something that's going on. That might actually help explain the Men in Black activities, right? Seems like Men in Black show up not only the silence people, but about their encounters with UFOs and or the UFO occupants, but also to gain knowledge from them, trying to figure out what else happened. It's like they don't want someone else moving in on their territory. That's what it could be. That could be part of this. Okay, let's see what my friend had written about this one. He says he agrees with A and B, but regarding item C, I am not aware of any other species. Yeah, well, yeah, I think that based on the reports over the years, I think that there are other species here. I think it's more than just one thing coming here. Okay, number 5. Several different groups are in open conflict, but all have the same goals and are using the same techniques. Some of these groups are less hostile toward us than others. There is no real way to judge the friends from the enemies, so great caution is advised in all approaches. Yeah, I don't know how do you differentiate between who's doing what? I mean, who's here to, you wouldn't be able to do that. So yeah, let's see. My friend here says, same comment as for item C, so he is not aware of any other species. All right. Okay, number 6. Preparations are being made to eliminate biologically unacceptable types among terrestrials. A very long-range plan is being followed by all groups. Major changes in the world's birth rates can already be noted. Seemingly natural catastrophes will occur on an increasing scale to further decimate the population. I don't know. I mean, for one thing, our population has risen. I mean, we're over 8 billion people right now, right? So I don't know. Since 1967, it was lower at that point, so we're actually at a higher rate. But then again, I mean, how do we know of all the people that are here now, the additional people? How do we know they're all completely human? How do we know that? I guess that's how you would answer that. All right, let's see what my friend said about that one. Yeah, he writes, birth rate continues to rise. Natural disasters happen all the time. Another bad prediction. Yeah, I would have to agree with that. And I just also want to point out regarding the previous one about the several different groups. He writes, now Keel wrote, there is no real way to judge the friends from the enemies. And my source writes, no friends have been detected and it's been 60 years. And then also with regard to number 6, he writes, with regard to the preparations made to eliminate biologically unacceptable types among terrestrials, my friend writes, eliminated by who? When does it start? Yeah. Okay. All right, moving on to number 7. Advanced inexplicable methods of mind control are being used by all groups more and more brazenly. Complicated measures for controlling the press and world governments are already being instituted. Religion, notably Catholicism and Judaism, play a vital role in this situation. Many of the entities are programmed to present themselves as representatives of God. Religion has always been a tool, a mode of communication between the controller and man. Man has misinterpreted much of the information he has been given through this tool. I find this one pretty interesting. What if they are? I mean, I was just talking about a story the other day when a woman provided her experience where she was contemplating suicide. She was actually had UFO encounters her whole life, and then back in the 80s, at one point, she was contemplating suicide because she still wasn't a mother. But of course, then she changed her mind and she snapped out of it, and she had a vision of Jesus Christ in her room. And so, I mean, is that the aliens or was it Jesus Christ? I mean, you have to ask yourself questions like that. Okay, let's see what my friend wrote about this one here. He wrote, I suppose this can be said, but it's no surprise. Yeah. Yeah, I think that one was, a possible thing here. I mean, if you think about a lot of different cases, some people come to believe that the things that were coming after them were demons, or or it's had something to do with their religion. They have a feeling of being closer to God sometimes when they have encounters, and that maybe it's a trick. Maybe these beings are playing a trick on these people. Just they're using their religion as a weapon against them. Right? That's something to think about. Okay, moving on to number 8. The UFO occupants have been able to operate openly at ground level because no one believes the reports of the witnesses and victims. There has been no communication between law enforcement agencies to determine the patterns in apparently outlandish complaints or to assess the scope and validity of those complaints. The early contactee situations were cleverly contrived to make the whole situation seem absurd so that future contactees would be automatically discredited and increased activity would go unnoticed. I want to say something about that. That's an interesting statement here because I actually had thoughts of this in my mind without ever reading what he wrote about this. I mean, when you look at contactees, the contactee movement from the 1950s, right? Those people seem ridiculous. It seems absolutely absurd. You don't see that really anymore. You don't see people like that acting like that about UFOs and aliens. For that period of time, it seems like the 50s into the 60s, there was all these people. They would have gatherings and it would meetings and conventions, and it would just seem absurd the way some of the stories some of them would tell. And maybe that was by design. Maybe the stories were true, but these people were set up and to make it so they would tell these silly stories and everyone would just think, oh my God, this can't be real. And then the real stuff starts happening and then everyone dismisses it because just think about what those contactees were saying back in the 50s. If you say anything about this, you're going to be viewed as a nut just like those people were. Okay, let's see what my anonymous friend wants to say about this one. Actually, for this one, he said that this is the one he meant to say. I suppose this can be said, but it's no surprise. Yeah, I actually attributed that quote before for number 7, but that was wrong. All right, moving on to the next one, number 9. Let's see. He says here, some of the groups involved are not cellular life forms at all, but are masses of intelligent energy, impossible to explain with our present-day science, controlled from a distant and reliant upon new charges of energy from a distant central source. Many nighttime sightings of glowing objects are really visible manifestations of this energy group. Now, I don't know how he came to that conclusion or what made him want to make that statement again. I mean, you could research this your whole life. I don't know how you could make this statement without having all the stuff at your fingertips, an actual craft outside or something. I don't know how you could make a statement like that, but he did. Again, he changed his mind on some of this stuff later on, but yeah. Okay, let's see what my friend here said, my anonymous friend. He wrote, "This is a ridiculous assertion with no scientific basis." Okay, I agree. Yeah. All right, number 10. Some of the groups involved, such as the Little Men, are formerly independent beings who have been brought under control and are now being utilized in the operation. Let's see what my friend says here. He says, no, they were simply genetically engineered and created. Yeah. So I'd have to agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that statement because... yeah, that's what it seems like. They've been genetically engineered by something else, right? By some higher alien intelligence, probably the mantids or something that's above them, I would have to think. Number 11, the solid vehicles which are observed occasionally are not bound by the physical laws which we recognize. They do not employ anti-gravity or any other principles understandable to us. They are usually invisible to our minds, but not to cameras and other mechanical devices such as radar, and exist in greater numbers than is imaginable. Key terrestrial bases are usually equipped with one such vehicle. See, again, I don't know how you would know this, so I can't say. I don't know that, and I don't think that is the case. I think they are using some sort of anti-gravity technology, and I don't know how you could make that statement. I just don't know how. Okay, let's see what my anonymous friend says. He says they operate according to physics beyond our current understanding. So that's what his statement is with regard to that. All right, moving on. Number 12. The bases are usually underground in thinly populated back road areas. When visible, they appear to be abandoned farms. These bases are equipped with elaborate communication devices designed so that they can be operated by terrestrials. They also contain the necessary medical equipment for the biological experiments mentioned above. Advanced telephone equipment is also installed in these bases, enabling the occupants to monitor and even control all telephone calls in their area without detection. Through some unfathomable system, they are also able to collect and examine mail sent to or from people in whom they are interested. I don't know how he came to that conclusion, but I mean, this is because let's see the problem with reading something like this, because later on he said this is not speculative, but it is speculative. I don't know how anybody could know this. I mean, if was there something that he was exposed to that made him come to this belief? I really don't know. And I believe the statement from my friend was that that statement is totally ridiculous. And I just want to point out too that the statement before that, he said that one was ridiculous as well. Number 13, terrestrials who blunder accidentally onto these bases when they are in full operation are usually brainwashed in some manner so that they retain no conscious memory of what they have seen. Those terrestrials who do not respond to this type of brainwashing are retained for experiments. It sounds scary, but is that what's going on? Now, I think in some form this is happening, but I don't know if the way he's describing it here, if that's how it would be. I don't know. Is it possible that sometimes there are some bases around here we just don't know where we don't know where they are, but if we stumble upon them accidentally, something might occur to us. Maybe that's why some people disappear. We were just talking about this in the previous show. Maybe that's what's going on. I guess it could be. I don't know. Let's see what my anonymous friend says. He says more rubbish. Yeah. And for the other one, yeah, he said it was ridiculous. And now this one here, he says more rubbish. I don't know. Maybe it's not rubbish. I don't know if it's rubbish. All right, number 14. The UFO occupants do not kill, but they do destroy minds or, by controlling minds, lead their victims to suicide. Now, I don't know about that. I don't see. Yeah. How do we know they don't kill? You don't know that. I think it's possible that they do kill people sometimes, for all we know. There are a lot of disappearances that are unsolved, right? Some of them could be caused by those beings. And do they destroy our minds or, by controlling minds, lead their victims to suicide? So basically, he's suggesting that some people who kill themselves do so because they're being brainwashed into doing it by aliens. Let's see what my anonymous friend says about that. He says, yet more rubbish. Okay, number 15. The majority of all contactees run in terror to the authorities, who never believe them, put them down as nuts, and don't even keep records of their complaints. Most of the others commit suicide or go insane. A very small minority remain in contact for months or even years. Often these contactees eventually volunteer for a trip. Some of these trips are of short duration, 1 month or so. Before taking a trip, the contactees are often required to sign a very legal form offering their minds and bodies for experimental purposes. I do not believe that one whatsoever. I think that's ridiculous. Let's see what my anonymous source says with regard to this. He writes, says the majority don't even know that they've been taken, for one thing. And then he writes later on, a trip, and they sign a contract with the aliens. I doubt it. Yes, I doubt it too. I don't go along with that one whatsoever. Number 16, the UFO operations include seeding our atmosphere with an undetectable chemical by releasing angel hair into clouds. The same chemical has been introduced into our water supplies worldwide since 1957. We have now been absorbing this chemical into our bodies for 10 years. Eventually, it will produce a number of unpleasant effects, notably mental confusion and receptivity to a generalized mind control process. Apparently, this chemical is being stored in our brains, which are largely water, and when properly triggered, will turn us into controlled entities similar to the UFO occupants. Now, that's an interesting concept here that he has. Yeah, I mean, there's been these angel hair stories that we hear about, we've heard about over the years. Some very interesting stuff with regard to that. Some sort of weird material that drops from a UFO and then mysteriously disappears. And it's really hard to figure out what it is. Possible, I guess, yeah. And actually, my anonymous source says he completely agrees with this one. And then he also writes, we don't know how it works or what the ultimate result will be, but I'm sure it's some method of subjugation and control. So he goes along with that one. He believes that is a possibility, that they are trying to control us, and they're doing so with some sort of chemicals released into the atmosphere, which we would have absolutely no power to prevent from happening, or I'm sure we haven't prevented it from happening. If they've been doing this kind of stuff, Well, I guess let's look at it this way though. At the same time, right? They're not able to control everybody, obviously, right? If they were, I wouldn't be sitting here talking about this stuff right now. Unless they're controlled. Unless, let's think about this. Maybe I'm being controlled somehow into talking about this. Maybe they're making me do this for some. Maybe they're using people like me as a means to help lead to disclosure. Maybe that's what this is all about. I don't think so, though. I don't feel like I'm being controlled. All right, number 17. The biological experiments consist of genetic changes. Pregnant women are treated so that their children will bear the desired characteristics. This is a long process and has been going on for many generations. Each new generation is carried further along the evolutionary scale. The next 2 generations will produce thousands of purebred aliens born of mothers whose parents had been treated and sired by the aliens through artificial means. These purebreds will form a nucleus for a community of aliens who will gradually inherit the earth and replace entirely the present races here. Some of these purebreds are programmed so they will be directly controlled and they will serve as leaders. Thousands of purebreds have already reached adulthood and are serving the UFO powers now. Thousands of others are sleepers. They don't even know what they are part of, that they are part of all of this. At the proper time, they can be triggered or possessed by the controllers. Now, I find this really interesting. He's writing this in 1967, and it wasn't until many, many years later till other researchers, like David M. Jacobs, had reached a very similar conclusion, right? I mean, he really did. My anonymous source. He writes, I agree with the premise, but the rest is speculation and has not occurred as described. Yeah, that's true, but at the same time, at the same time, he was describing something that pretty much was hashed out in a different, very similar fashion by people like David M. Jacobs, who interviewed over 1,000 abductees and came to the determination that these beings are here to create a hybrid race. They have them sprinkled out all among us right now, and at some point they're going to take over with the praying mantis aliens in charge. And this sounds somewhat close to this. This is a conclusion that John Keel had reached back in 1967 and apparently changed his mind at some point later on. But at this point, this is what he was thinking. So I don't know. It sounds similar to me to things that we hear from people like David M. Jacobs. All right, moving on to the final one here. Number 18, it says, we have no possible defense against the techniques being employed. Few people would be willing to believe all of this, no matter how well documented our presentation might be. Our governments and our military services are helpless, even though they are fully aware of the situation. Our one slender hope is that there might exist one outside race which might sympathize with us and defend us. Hence our massive efforts to broadcast signals into outer space. We are literally crying out for help. So is that the explanation for SETI? That they're set up these things because this is pretty interesting. Maybe the reason SETI's trying to listen in for signals, right? They're actually trying to listen to signals from other places. Maybe they're trying to find someone out there that might help us, right? Because they know maybe they really do know what's going on. Maybe that's what's going on with SETI. Maybe they really aren't stupid like we think, right? Maybe they know what's going on and they understand the dire situation that we're in because of these beings and that we're helpless against them, and we're hoping that maybe something else is out there that is more powerful than them. That just popped into my head. I don't believe that, but hey, it's something to consider. When it comes to this phenomenon, everything is on the table, right? That's how I view it, because we don't get answers from our government, so all we are left to do is speculate. A lot of it's wild speculation. I wonder how much of this is going to turn out to be true when we do finally get to the part where we all learn the absolute truth on this, right? With regard to the intentions of these visitors or whatever they are. And then he ends it with this. He says, once the UFO powers realize fully that we are aware of their plans, they might feel it necessary to take immediate action. Therefore, it is important that this knowledge be restricted to a very small group. Belief in the existence of UFOs would be the first step to understanding and believing in the more complicated and panic-provoking general situation. It is thus imperative that the UFO's existence remain discredited for as long as possible, and that this knowledge be kept from the general public. Boy, he sounds like he's a member of the control group when he's writing that part there. Some people still believe that today. Some people believe that, and sometimes I think that too. I mean, maybe I shouldn't be talking about the Vegas aliens all the time, showing people the absolute proof that we're not alone. Maybe I should just hush that up and just act stupid about it. But no, I can't do that. All right, my anonymous friend who did work at NASA, he says this may have been true in 1967, but we will develop countermeasures if we have enough time. Uh, but he also writes later on he agrees totally with the final paragraph where it talked about the UFO powers realize once the UFO powers realize fully that we are aware of their plans, they might feel it necessary to take immediate action. He believes in that one totally. With the first part of that, number 18, he says, if we have enough time, we could develop countermeasures. And maybe this guy actually does know about some of those countermeasures being developed because he did do some work for DARPA, right? Which would be, you would think would be working on things to that end. But I just found that really interesting, all of this. To see something like that from John Keel, someone who I always thought didn't think that way. I knew that he changed his mind at some point. I didn't know this document existed. Apparently, it's been out there now for 4 years. And I want to say thanks to Rob Boiter for pointing it out. And of course, I will leave the links so everyone could check this out. And there's actually another discussion on this from a few years ago when it was being discussed on Reddit that you might want to check out. I'll leave the link for that one too. There's a lot of different comments. This was somebody posted this on Reddit 2 years ago in the High Strangeness subreddit, and there were a lot of very interesting comments. I thought, yeah, somebody, he was saying in every county in the United States. He was saying every county, and then that's what he was saying. Yeah, he was saying every county. Somebody pointed out maybe he meant the right country because I don't know about that. No. He actually said county in the United States. So, yeah, he didn't mean that at all. Somebody else wrote here, I really love the work John Keel did and his dedication to fearless, in-depth journalism, but I very much seriously hope much of this is untrue. I think some of it is true. I think some of it could be true, actually, rather. I think some of it, is, I don't know. To me, it sounds like some of it sounds most certainly like speculation, which, I wonder why at the very end of that document he said this is not speculative. Somehow he felt like he knew this at the time, but again, this is not the way he talked in years after the fact. He expressed concerns about some of the issues with the phenomena, including like cattle mutilation. I heard him still talking about that, and as the years rolled on, but he did think it had something else. It was some sort of ultra-terrestrial. That's he blamed it on an ultra-terrestrial force. Like we talked about early on in this show. But yeah, you got to check out. There's a lot. This Reddit post, where this was posted, there was a lot of really good comments here. And actually, there's comments on the John Keel website as well. So I would check out both of these if you're interested in learning more about this. It's a very interesting document, especially considering the source of the document. Because again, John Keel wasn't someone who thought this way, especially like throughout the 70s, 80s, 90s and into the 2000s until he died. This is not how I didn't expect to ever read something like this from John Keel, but I just found it fascinating that this is some of the conclusions that he reached. And I do think at that time, and even though he might have abandoned some of those conclusions later on, I still think that some of them could be applicable. They could be absolutely something that's true. But again, all of it's speculation, even though he says it's not speculative. Anyway, I just want to say this. I want to say thank you all for joining me today. Until next time.